Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to read Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a very, very important leader in the continent of Africa, more specifically, the country of South Africa. And who can tell me where they think South Africa is on this continent? If it has the word South in front of the word Africa, where do you think it is on this map? Nelson Mandela. Words and paintings by Kadir Nelson. Roli Lala played barefooted on the grassy hills of Kunu. He fought boys with sticks and shot birds with slingshots. The smartest Madiba child of 13, he was the only one chosen for school. His new teacher would not say his Xhosa name. She called him Nelson instead. So, in what part of the world do you think the language of Xhosa is spoken? According to what we just read on this text, what is Nelson Mandela's Xhosa name? Nelson was 9 when his father joined the ancestors in the sky. To continue his schooling, Nelson was sent miles away to live with a powerful chief. "Brace yourself, my boy," his mother held her tears and said goodbye. What do you think it means when someone says brace yourself, or when someone tells you brace yourself? Is it because something good is going to be happening? Or maybe something challenging and hard will be happening? The chief held counsel to warriors, medicine men, farmers, and laborers. The elder ones told stories of old Africa. For centuries, Tembu, Pondo, Xhosa, and Zulu peoples lived in the mountains and valleys of South Africa. The land was bountiful, fertile, and rich. The people hunted, fished, and raised crops, living in relative peace. But they made war on European settlers who came in search of land and treasure. The settlers' weapons were stronger and breathed fire. Slowly, the people were conquered. Their land was taken and spirits dimmed. South Africa belonged to Europe. The elders grew quiet and Nelson felt sorry. On this page, we see that there are a lot of commas. Who can tell me why we are using commas in this part of the writing? Why do we use commas in writing? Nelson grew into a young man and attended fine schools in the golden city of Johannesburg, where Africans were poor and powerless. Nelson became a lawyer and defended those who could not defend themselves. What is a lawyer according to what we read on this page about Nelson Mandela? What do lawyers do? The government grew harsh and created a cruel policy. It split the people into 3: African, Indian, European. It was called apartheid. The people were set apart. European-only beaches, European-only parks, European-only theaters. And the people protested. Why did people protest in South Africa? When do you protest? Do you protest when you're happy with the way things are going? Or do you protest when you're upset about something? Maybe you protest when you don't want to go to sleep by a certain time at home, but your mom and dad are telling you that you need to go to sleep. Maybe you're upset because you don't want to go to sleep. So then you protest against them and you tell them that you don't want to sleep at the time that they're telling you. But sometimes it's necessary to go to sleep at that time because your parents know what's best for you. But the European settlers of South Africa They didn't know what was best for the people of South Africa. They just wanted to oppress them and control them and separate them, which is not good. That is very bad. Let's look at the word apartheid. What does that word look like in for example, English? If we look at the text, there's another word here that looks like the word apartheid. Who can tell me or point to that word? Yes, the other word in this text is apart. Apart is very similar to apartheid. They look very similar. And it's because the point of apartheid was to separate people and keep people apart. Like in Spanish, aparte. Estoy aparte de ti. I am apart from you. I am separate from you. I am away from you. There's no close contact. Nelson organized rallies to fight apartheid. We must win back Africa, he told them. South Africa is for all South Africans. Amandla, he shouted. Ngawetu, they responded. Power to the people. And the people loved him. Speaking out was against the law, and Nelson was arrested and jailed for a fortnight with 100 men. They danced and sang, calling the ancestors to join the fight for freedom. Amandla, Ngawetu. Here, we use the word fortnight because Nelson Mandela was jailed for a fortnight. Here, we're talking about a duration of time or how long something took. Now, just like in Spanish, how the Spanish that is spoken in Mexico is very different than the Spanish that is spoken in the Dominican Republic. Yes or no? Yes. So in English, we have different variations or different ways of speaking English depending on the place where you're from. In the United States, we speak one way of English or one variation of English, and in a place called the United Kingdom, they speak another way or another variation of English. It's the same language, but some words are a little different. So, the word fortnight is a United Kingdom variation or a British word for 2 weeks. We say fortnight when we're talking about 2 weeks. So something may take 2 weeks. We say it will take a fortnight. Nelson Mandela was arrested and jailed for a fortnight. So he was arrested and jailed for how long? 2 weeks. Very good. The ancestors sent their daughter Winnie to stand next to Nelson. They found love and married and welcomed children into the world. Together they stood and fought apartheid. The state vowed to put Nelson in jail, and he went underground. He wore different disguises and lived in the shadows. Empty flats, farmhouses, and bedrooms of friends became Nelson's home, while he organized more rallies and protests. The police put out a warrant for his arrest, but they could not find him. Here, we have another variation of the English word, flat. So, in the United Kingdom, they use the word flat instead of an apartment. So, instead of saying, oh, I live in an apartment, you say, I live in a flat. Or, hey, come over to my apartment. In the United Kingdom, they would say, come over to my flat. And the reason for this United Kingdom variation is because it was the European settlers, the United Kingdom people, or the English European settlers that came to South Africa and started to oppress people. And when they were starting to control and oppress people, they were also influencing the language that was spoken in South Africa. Nelson slipped across the border to visit free nations where black Liberians, Ethiopians, and Moroccans freely conversed with white Europeans and brown Egyptians. They shook hands, a glimpse of freedom for life at home. Nelson returned to South Africa to cleanse his homeland of hate and discrimination. I want to take a look at the word cleanse. What does the word cleanse look like? Yes, it looks like the word clean, and it means the same thing. When you cleanse something, it's because you're cleaning something, okay? And it doesn't literally mean like when you are physically cleaning something. It's more of a figurative way. You're cleaning something of the badness of a place or of a person or of a government, okay? So Nelson Mandela wanted to cleanse or clean the bad things that were happening in South Africa because of the bad people. With a vision for peace and harmony, Nelson felt renewed and ready to fight for freedom. But on a drive to town, he was captured, arrested, and taken to jail. The people cried, "Free Mandela! Free Mandela!" Wet paint and posters covered South African walls. On a small island off the coast of the southern tip of Africa, Nelson sat in a tiny cell. Every day the world passed him by. Cold meals, thin blankets, hard labor. Nelson hammered rocks into dust and read, studied, and educated fellow prisoners. Days turned into weeks, months, and years. His children grew up, relatives passed away. South Africa began to fall apart. There were more protests, more rallies, and violence. The people needed a leader. Nelson snuck a message to the people: "I will return." As years passed, the world pressed South Africa to change. The new president agreed, and European-only signs came down. Beaches, parks, and theaters opened. Nelson's comrades were set free. Apartheid was no more. Nelson was an old man. After 27.5 years, the prison gates opened and Nelson was at last set free. Thousands surrounded him and Winnie hugged him. Nelson looked into the sky and smiled at the ancestors. "Amandla, thank you." The sun sparkled in his gray and white hair. Nelson stood proudly with the wind at his back and spoke to a colorful sea of people. "We must forget our terrible past and build a better future for South Africa. Let us continue to fight for justice and walk the last mile to freedom." Millions were given the vote and elected Nelson Mandela their new leader. South Africa was free at last and finally at peace. The ancestors, the people, the world celebrated. "Amandla! Ngawetu!"